Very good morning to you all. Quick question if I may. How many of you are here for the first time at one of these conferences? That's fantastic. A fair few, actually. That's very good. That makes me feel a little better. Everyone will repeat something that I said last time I was up here. So it'll be fresh and new for some of those who are new here today, and for others a reminder where we're at. So let me show you this slide first. I'm just going to have a look at it. It's a simplification of the challenge, really, that public services and the local authority has. I suspect this graph works across the whole country, actually, but it's relevant to Swindon as well. But there's something else around there as well, which is driving change. And that, of course, is the major change in national policy, which some of you may be interested in picking up. Only just last week, in fact, something called the Localism Bill became the Localism Act. It's now had royal assent, and I haven't got time to go today into what that does, but it offers a great opportunity for many of you who are able to get more involved, whether that be in running services, connecting yourselves, particularly around localised planning. If you want to have a much greater say about what your place looks like and how it works, you can now do that under the neighbourhood planning framework that's available. But equally for us at the local authority, that of course means major change in terms of how we work, because we can't continue to work in the same way that we've always been working. And also there's something else very major happening that you may or may not have picked up, called the Open Public Services, currently a white paper, which at some stage will probably manifest itself as a number of different acts of Parliament. But potentially that completely opens up the delivery of services, perhaps traditionally done by public bodies, opens it up to things called any willing provider. So many of you voluntary groups, community groups, if you feel actually that you could run those services better, as I say, the local authority, you will have the opportunity to do that. So when I look at this slide, I can look at it in two ways. What it's showing us, basically, very simplistically, obviously it's a massive oversimplification, it's a challenge that I face in the role that I do, in that demand is increasing, and it manifests itself in lots of different ways, whether it be around expectation of quality. But equally, as we do know, with an ageing population, the need for support and care for elderly, often for children born with very complicated physical and mental problems, now thankfully living much longer and living through adulthood, but quite rightly deserving, demanding support to help them live fulfilling and independent lives. So demand is increasing. But equally at the same time, I'm sure you've heard the rhetoric, but money is diminishing. The amount of money that many public bodies and local authority has is reducing by about a third over a 3-year period. That's the challenge that we have. So straight away, you can see that there's a big gap, an unsustainability gap, basically, between demand rising and money going down. And you can address that in a number of different ways. So I can look at this slide and be impressed about it and say, oh goodness me, how are we going to maintain services? How are we going to meet that increasing demand? Now, some of the rhetoric is around when you just drive out efficiency, you take out costs, you reduce management costs, you buy better, a whole host of things. And of course, you have to do that. And part of what we do in the council and something called Strong Together, that I'll share with you in a second, has been around how you take costs out. Because clearly, if your overall budget is less, then we need to look at how you can be more efficient. But I can tell you that traditionally efficiency will probably only get you about 10 or 15% maximum saving on your budget. I've worked in the commercial world, so I've seen it in the private sector as well as the public sector. The scale of challenge that we have here in Swindon, on a wider basis, is far in excess of that. It's in far in excess of that. So I could be really depressing you now, after hearing that wonderful singing. But actually, I think it is really important that public bodies are very open with you about the scale of the challenge that we face. Because we only exist to support our communities and to provide services to people. That's our raison d'etre. So it is really important that you, A, understand the challenge we're facing, but in our view of the Council, actually, that you are part of the solution to help us meet this, because this is a societal issue that we have. So when I look at this slide, actually I see opportunity. I see opportunity for change, an opportunity for doing things in a very different way. But the reason why I've shown you this graph here around trust, and I kind of overlaid it a little bit actually, that the proposition that we are taking to you as our community is that actually we want to work in a different way with you. To be blunt, we have tended to work in a very top-down way, doing to. This is how it is, like it will again, I'm thinking rather colloquially. But that is how public services, not just in Swindon, but traditionally I think have worked with people. And in many cases, we haven't listened. And I mean being present and listening, truly listening to what people are saying. And certainly my experience is many people have felt disenfranchised, disconnected, not able to work with. And that's just not a sustainable position. That's not, for me, healthy public services. I know Rod shares that view very strongly as well. So actually there's plenty of evidence out there that trust in bodies like local authorities is certainly not getting any better, and in some cases actually declining as a whole, that is. So obviously, if we see the solution as part of how do we get alongside with people and communities and work in a bit of techno-jargon here, but much more co-design and co-production, so we are standing side by side, challenging each other, but for positive reasons, about how things could be different. Actually, if trust is not where we want it to be, that's actually quite difficult. Because there'll always be that thing about, yeah, but we don't listen, or we'll do what we want to do anyway. And I hear that quite regularly by a whole series of engagements that we have. So again, let me be really clear, it's not a Swindon only problem, this is what we see in the sector. So what we are really trying to do, and need your help, is to change that paradigm, effectively. I'll just briefly read through this. One of our first strategic discussions around this was, first of all, how do we join up for local people? Because, you know, we have the police, we have health, we have the local authority, we have the criminal justice system, and in many cases, to the end user, to the resident, actually, those boundaries are forced boundaries, they don't mean anything. And quite often, people find they get pushed from pillar to post, both within the local authority, but with partners as well. So we took a very strategic decision to say, do you know what, we're going to join this up. We're going to do our damnedest to join this up for people. Not only from an efficiency perspective, because clearly there is some duplication in some of the work we do with partners, so there's opportunity to be more efficient. But actually, from the end user perspective, actually, they have to get moved from pillar to post. How can that be right? How can that be right? So that's what One Swindon headline is really about. And our partners have been working really closely with us to join it up at the local level. Now, it's not quite as simple as it sounds, because all of our partners, like us, have vertical masters in Whitehall that they serve that actually determine quite often the way that they work. Only yesterday in this building, we met with probably about 12 civil service managers from across the whole of Whitehall to work with them about how can they help us to join it up at the local level. And there is a project called Community Budgets, which government is piloting, that we'll be involved in some shape or form, helping to join that up. So that's part of it. Excuse me. But it's not also about joining up, it's how all of the partners work differently together and with you. And again, it is what we call an emergent strategy. There we go, all techno-jargon. So by that I mean, I can't simply flip my fingers and all has changed. Actually, it's a journey we have to go on. And it's a journey that we're committed to long-term, and hope that you'll join us in that journey as well. Because it isn't just about public sector partners working together. We're working very intensively with the private sector in terms of all the businesses that we have in Swindon. What role could they play in helping us to achieve some of the social outcome? Many of the people vibrant communities. But equally, you as well, as residents, as taxpayers, but also many of you are organised as community and voluntary groups. I know from speaking to many of you, so many of you would like to get more involved. And that's what we want to try to move towards. How can we work more effectively with you? John Gilbert, you're in the room, aren't you? Want to stand up for a minute? Come on, don't be shy. John, many of you will know, has been Director of Children's Services. He's also Director of Adult Social Care as well. We joined in 2 roles. But John, like a number of the directors, doesn't go through an interview process for our new structure. So he now has this role called Director of Commissioning. So that's where all the money's held, basically. So he's the guy you want to talk to in the director, effectively. John, you want to just very quickly say a word around how you want to join up for the voluntary sector as well. Let me get a microphone to John. So I just like to swing this on John.
Take time off, thank you.
Yeah, so we'll be fine. Just 20 seconds, John. We'll be fine.
I think one of the things that certainly I've learned in the 4 or 5 months I've been involved with adult social services particularly is around the way that we're working with voluntary organisations, and obviously today is very much central to that, and which is very different to the way that we've been working with children's services. And one thing that we're very conscious of, and I'm certainly very conscious of, is the need for joining that up and actually trying to get to a different relationship with voluntary organisations. And it very much echoes to what you said, Gavin, in terms of understanding much more organisations that are out of Swindon, how we can work together, but actually working to a set of agreed outcomes. And I think in some areas we've worked on a very contractual basis, which is looking at very much a financial contractual basis, without really understanding what are we trying to get to, what's the outcome that we're trying to jointly achieve. And I think by understanding that and working in a different way, still have to have very financial driven targets in relation to that, but working together and understanding that and sharing that knowledge. So we're bringing that intelligence together across the council, because I know when you contact the council, you're not quite sure who to go to. And the way that we deal with grants, the way that we deal with organisations at all different scales seem to be very, very different. So we want to try and bring that intelligence together and actually work in a way that brings that together in one place within the commissioning team, bringing together our community and children's services to make it much more sensible.
Thank you, John. Just testing you with brief, so very helpful. But thank you. This is a genuine intent, not a rhetorical one. And we're going to have to learn how to do that properly. And we will get things wrong, and we need you to help us to learn that. You know, quite often when I meet with voluntary groups, the stories I get about having to put you in incredible hoops before we even give you access to any money. 80-page contracts before you can. That cannot be right. We've got to bust through that. And that's part of John's role to really help how we can achieve that as well. I won't go through all of these. We can catch up in the break if you want to know a bit more. But we have put together an umbrella framework for One Swindon. So the intent is about how we join it up better and how we're committed to joining it up better. But equally, we put around some outcomes that we're looking to achieve around that. And you've heard from the council leader that we've made some progress around there. But we want this to be an ongoing debate. We've had to start with something in terms of the outcomes we're looking to pursue. But increasingly, it is our objective that more people, particularly from localities, get the opportunity to voice their priorities, to really debate them within neighbourhoods, with people getting involved, such that that informs the priorities of the council. As I said, simplistically, we tend to work top down. Okay, what do we think people need, and we prioritise our resources in that way. Every drive from national government, and what we're trying to do here is about trying to turn that upside down so that much more of our priorities and our resources are guided and determined by what comes from the localities at the local levels. And over a period of time, you'll see how we're changing our governance, because any public money is spent has to be accounted for, but how we change our governance, A, that it's easily accessible for people to understand, but such that actually it does support the bottom-up approach from priorities. And in terms of One Swindon, this does grant you a sense of what it might look, how it might feel and look differently, effectively. You know, I would love us, you know, utopia in many ways for me, to get to a position where actually there is one budget for Swindon, one budget that collectively we can determine how we can best make use of that money. Now, that's a very complex puzzle, and there are lots of white-collar departments involved and the rest of the stuff. But government is also showing its intention to support that through its localism work and its community projects. And I think Swindon is certainly one of the leaders in the country that will be driving that agenda. Let me just move on very briefly to Stronger Together. So One Swindon really is a watch about how we're trying to bring this together. But equally, therefore, I have to really think about how does the local authority work to make this a reality. So how does it work? And then after that, how is it structured to make it a success? Because as you know, structure is the last thing we do. We do clear about what we're doing and how you're going to do it. So we launched back in the summer and had full cross-party support for an organisational strategy called Stronger Together, which is about how we are going to fundamentally redesign what the council does, how it does it, and how it's structured. It is as big as that. It really is a revolution in terms of what we're there to do. And just very briefly, some of you may have seen this before. These are our kind of strategic intents. I won't go into more, you're capable of reading them, I'm sure. But the big change, which we have now recruited to the first two tiers, so basically everybody in the council is having to go through a fundamental review of their job, what they're there to do, and where they're going to sit in the organisation. And you can imagine that is a very demanding, but also very anxious time for everybody who works in the local authority, because it means uncertainty. We're trying to get through it as quickly as we can, because actually what we do need is people to have some certainty over their futures, so that actually they start thinking about the job ahead. So we are moving as quickly as we can. But we have appointed to the first two tiers, as I call them. So we're moving from the old traditional children's services, adult services, environmental services, to a model that we call effectively commissioning, delivery, and then locality, with strong support from our support services to enable that. Again, I'm not going to go into detail about that model today, but the drive behind that, some key points I would bring out, first of all, commissioning is where the money's held. Okay? So the resources we've got available, how do we use them for the best intent? How do we get the maximum value from them? So the commission doesn't mean you outsource everything. What it says is, how do we ensure we get best value? And that might be engaging with partners rather than doing direct delivery ourselves. That may be a consequence in some areas, but it's not a mantra of outsourcing. It's about how do we join this stuff up more effectively and make a better use of the money. And in commissioning, I would expect over time to see a much bigger role for the voluntary and third sector in delivering services. I would expect that to be a long-term effect. And delivery is about making sure that where we have got delivery, particularly within the councils, we are driving that as efficiently as we possibly could. We're reducing overlap, we're joining up as much as we can. And then for me, what I think is potentially one of the most exciting new approaches is this locality function. So as Roderick was saying, we have now recruited full-time locality leaders. It doesn't stop there. The resources we have available to us, not necessarily locality leads. I think one of the candidates said this on their interview actually. It is actually about how every single person in the council has a locality focus. Because part of this is not about just how we get out there with you, standing alongside you and helping to prioritise together, but it's actually how commissioning and delivery absolutely plug into the locality agenda. How every person in the council is thinking local first. What is it that local people want? That's a change. Of course, behind that is a massive cultural change. Because that's about to really understand how to work alongside people to create new opportunities. And being no doubt that's going to feel pretty uncomfortable for many of us, because actually sometimes it's quite a nice position behind a technical face that says this is a technical view. Actually, real localism is about standing side by side, often having difficult conversations, often there's contention in the room, because that's the nature of work we do sometimes. This heart says that, and this heart says that. But feeling confident and able to hold that space. That's the kind of culture change that we're looking. Very briefly, I just quite like someone on the stand again now. We've got all the tier 1, so that's John, who you've already met. If we could have Bernie, someone who's very Bernie. So Bernie is the Director of Delivery, is that role. Matt, who you know, is the Director for Locality. And we also have Stuart and Hitesh stand up. Look around the room. So Stuart looks after finance, revenues and benefits, and property. Have I got all of Stuart? And Hitesh looks after the transformation piece. So again, actually, whilst these 3 pillars may look like a glamorous jobs, none of that works unless the enabling services are working efficiently and in the time where it's supporting them. So have a good look at them, because I really do invite you to probe and interrogate them when you get a chance to invade. Ask them, so what's the job you're going to be doing then? How's it going to be different? Talk to me about your job. Invite them to come to some of your community groups and talk to them about what the jobs are. I think they would love that, wouldn't you? Yeah, that's not on YouTube this morning, so that's what they had to do. Okay, well, sit down, thank you very much. So we're going to just go through, we've done the tier 2, we're now going for the second phase consultation with the next level of managers as well, and that will go on for a little while before we go through to recruitment. And then sort of wrapping up for me fairly soon now. So in Strong Together, this is again how we envisage what it will look like when we got there. Again, I can't just put my fingers in and happen overnight, and I need your help or support or challenge to help us get there. So yes, we do. We will always be there to ensure services are being delivered. That is always going to be a key role for the council. But equally, we've got that demand curve going on there. I want us to be able to better influence demand, to help people stay out of vulnerability for longer, because we can do it actually. And we need to be doing that for people as well. Creating solutions together, co-producing, working together to find new opportunities. I won't go through all of those, but again, that's the sense of where I think we are today, but where we want to get to. And finally, I plagiarised a text from one of the document here. But actually, I'm just trying to describe to you how we think it should look and what we're striving for. The people, all of us, I'm a taxpayer in Swindon as well. We're not just simply passive recipients of services, but every single person in the room, actually no matter how vulnerable they may be, still have assets. And by that I don't mean houses that we can get our hands on, I mean skills and capabilities and knowledge and wisdom. But actually too often we ignore, because we look at people as we view them from a need perspective. But actually everybody has assets and capabilities that we should be using and developing. So that's probably enough for me at this stage. We're going to be talking, I think, during the rest of the day around some of this stuff and how to make it real. Because actually, I can stand up here and give you the rhetoric around commitment and about what we're really trying to achieve. But actually, people will only believe it when they start to see it being a bit different. And I guess what I ask you in that is that I do invite your challenge to help us get there. But when you see it for real, actually, this does feel a little bit different. They are trying, but actually you support us in that objective. Perhaps even spread the word that we're trying to get there. Because too often it is very fashionable, particularly in the media, to criticise